So I intended to go live much earlier than 7:47 p.m. I know that Pate goes live in 13 minutes, so there will be stiff competition, but, you know, that's our goal. Our goal is to be the best college football program in America, so that means eventually we will have to go up against the best. Kudos to Josh Pate for manning the best college football YouTube show. I would even say just college football show in general. 360,000 subscribers, might be even more than that now. Certainly runs an admirable, good operation. So we'll be competing with his slot, not even competing, just airing during his slot. We're not competing with him yet. But anyway, surprise. Typically not live on Tuesdays, but I wanted to go live on Tuesdays. Why? Because there's a lot I want to talk about. I wasn't able to go live on Sunday due to a family reunion. I went to see my dad's side of the family, and I will probably never see the vast majority of them again. Sad, but it's just how it is. And it was good for my grandpa to see that side of the family. And then Monday, I was tired. I was exhausted. It was hot. Didn't produce a show that was up to my standard of quality. So we're here. I'm going to talk about Michigan, Ohio State, and give some of my own personal predictions, including record predictions and analysis on the team. I want to talk about Kirby Smart and why I think he's the best head coach in America still. Texas, their defense is underrated. I have no idea why people are undervaluing Texas on defense. A quick few seconds to spend on Paul Feinbaum and what he said about Arch Manning. Total idiocy, totally on drugs. Arch Manning has not showcased enough to be the best college quarterback since Tim Tebow. He will not showcase enough to be the best college quarterback since Tim Tebow. Highly doubt that. Saying that because Tebow had a wonderful long 3 years of being a Heisman caliber player for Florida. And there's quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, where I just don't know if Arch Manning, whether it's this year, so only 1 year and then he goes off to the draft, or 2 years, will live up to that. So Texas on offense, and I see this even in EA Sports rankings where they have Texas as the number 1 offense. I feel like Texas on offense is pretty overvalued, but it balances out by how people are undervaluing their defense. So we'll get into that, and specifically Colin Simmons as well, because Colin Simmons is not even ranked inside the top 50 of some people's top 100 player lists, which is, again, asinine. Completely, utterly asinine. And also on the deck for things to talk about here, Jeremiah Smith's comments. Don't have any more of a problem with them than I do Bryce Underwood's comments. I don't. Not one bit. If anything, Smith has a little bit more ground to stand on in saying that because he's played in college and won a national title, and again, circle back to playing in college and being a successful player. I think Underwood is also going to do that at Michigan, but not quite proven yet. Regardless, both things are bold, but why not come out and say them? I think both of those players are alpha players with a mindset that is of the hunter, not the hunted, similarly to Kirby Smart as a coach, and I think that both are going to be legends in their own right. Certainly Smith, Underwood's more speculative, but they both carry this controlled pride and targeted effort and anger, and yet humility and intelligence, and I guess you could call it yin and yang among them, where they're balanced. They are complete people. They are complete players. So I don't have a problem with what Smith said, with all that being said. I don't. I love him. As for some of the people reacting to them, none other than Barstool Tate. Some have called him Ohio Taint, which is pretty funny. It's Ohio State fans who call him that. Idiocy. Ohio State's not guaranteed a win over Michigan just because one of their star players came out and said something. In the same way that Michigan's not guaranteed a win over Ohio State because Bryce Underwood told LeBron James that it's over for Ohio State. You still have to work. You still have to go up to Ann Arbor if you're Ohio State and win. And it's not a guarantee. I mean, Michigan should be better than they were last year. Ohio State should be worse. Last year was the year to get Michigan, and now all of a sudden the game's being hyped up again. Its importance is resurfacing after some fans and Ross Bjork kind of downplayed it. Ohio State's locker room, though, and a large portion of their fans didn't. I'm excited for the game. Honestly, Jeremiah Smith's comments made me more excited for the game than I have been recently. I'm not of the opinion that either Ohio State or Michigan are going to win it all this year. I have the opinion that both will enter the game with at least one loss, if not two. And the fan bases have been a little bit more on the toxic end, in my opinion, ever since 2024 ended. But we're getting back around to it. I'm excited. Just wanted to point that out. If you are like Barstool Tate and you think that a player saying something guarantees anything, you're an idiot. Seek help. Or maybe I can't even help you. But Jeremiah Smith, I have no issue with what he said. None. Like, call your shot. Do it. And I happen to think that Michigan and Ohio State are going to split the next 2 years for a variety of reasons. So I think Smith will be in part correct in what he said. And finally, just as a little bit of a fun topic before we really get started here, and I see the super chat. I see it. Justin Ziegler, thank you for the 10. I'll get to that in a few seconds here. Some coaches I would love to meet, just as a fun 60-second topic to discuss before we really dive in. Ryan Day, number one. I think he's a really good person. I love his demeanor. Would be interested to see if I kind of get the feeling I do about him if I were to meet with him in person and have some conversations with him. See if I can maybe understand his demeanor and what goes on in his head a little bit more. Because I think he's a very complex, hard to read, really good person, along with being an elite coach. Kirby Smart would be another. Nick Saban too, but Saban's retired, so he doesn't count. Kirby Smart, because I think Kirby Smart's an absolute animal and is kind of viewed as the, I guess, father of the sport right now, as the successor to Saban. I would love to, of course, meet Sharon Moore because I'm biased and I'm a Michigan guy. That's the only time I'll let my bias through on a show. It's just for that or other fun topics that aren't consequential. I would love to meet Dan Lanning. I would love to meet Chris Kleiman. Matt Campbell, too, because Matt Campbell is someone who I think can very easily be misunderstood. I'd like to ask him the question, behind closed doors, why have you stuck it out in Ames? Why? Why haven't you packed up your bags and traveled and settled somewhere else besides Ames? But certainly interesting. Coaches who aren't head coaches that I would like to meet, and I'll circle back to this in future shows because it's a pretty brief list. I'd love to visit Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator at Penn State. Would love to visit him. Would love to visit Matt Patricia because I think the changes he's made in his personal life and the change going from being the DC at the Pats to then the DC with the Eagles and failing with them for a brief stint. Now he's in college with Ohio State. I would love to meet Ryan Grubb. I'd love to visit Mike Bobo. Ask him what he thinks of all the criticism directed his way. And then also D'Anton Lynn. And I'd ask Lynn how bad it really was. Like, how atrocious was the roster you took over at USC? How bad of a DC was Alex Grinch? Would love that. And then we'll get to questions in the chat. That's one of the other small topics that I wanted to get to before we begin. So we have a super chat here. I will answer that, and then we'll get on to the show. Just give me a few seconds here to get this all of this suited up. Okie dokie. And Justin Ziegler, thank you for the $10 super chat. Hey Sam, wanted to support you and ask a follow-up question to a video. You said if James Franklin doesn't reach the Natty, the season isn't a success. If that happens, possibly failure, what does Penn State do? Well, it's a similar situation, I think, to Michigan not winning it all in 23 or Ohio State not winning it all in 24. The coach won't be fired. I don't think Franklin would be fired if say, Penn State goes 11-1 regular season. They lose to Ohio State. They rematch with them in Indy, and they beat them. 12-1, won the Big Ten, beat Oregon, beat Ohio State, split them in the series. So you have 2 big wins, and you've won the Big Ten. Now you win your first round game, or you probably get a bye in this scenario. So you get a bye, win your quarterfinal game. Let's say you lose in the semifinal, or you lose in the national championship game. Well, now you have a 13-2 or 14-2 record. Franklin isn't being fired at that point. He just had the best season by a mile in his time at Penn State, and the best season in Penn State history since probably 2005. And from a power rating standpoint, they might be better than that team, and it might be the best Penn State quality team since the 1990s, since they had that undefeated, I believe it was in 1994, 12-0 season where they should have played for the national championship, but college football was different back then. All I think that happens is we all accept that there is a cap at Penn State as long as Franklin is there. And I think in the long run, it probably wouldn't change a whole lot, but knowing how Penn State operates, how they recruit, and who Franklin is, you would have to have so much more go your way in terms of NIL, in terms of keeping your quality coordinators. You'd have to do so much to ensure you could get back to the mountaintop to try again. Whereas if Penn State wins it all this year, the season's a success. You know that Franklin can produce a team that is of insane caliber. And if your coordinators leave, like if you win it all this year and Kolnicki leaves, you feel good about the future because you just broke through in a major way. You win the Big Ten, but you don't win it all, and maybe you lose to Ohio State once or lose to them, period, never see them again, and don't win it all, and Kolnicki leaves, then you kind of feel like, was this our peak? Is this going to be the best team we ever have under Franklin, and we didn't even win it all? Or let's say Jim Knowles leaves a year down the road, or even after 1 year for whatever reason, I don't know. You won't feel as good in the future. That's what I think happens. It's the same way with Ohio State, the same exact thing with what they had in 24, or Michigan in 23. Ohio State, let's say they lose to Texas in the Cotton Bowl. Well, right there, you go 12-3. Now, Day would stay. He would absolutely stay. Let's say they even lose to Oregon in the Rose Bowl. No blowout. You blow out Tennessee, which was going to happen no matter what. That was the worst matchup for any team facing Ohio State almost all year was Tennessee. Just the way they were built, their offensive line issues, Nico, the fact that it was in the cold, on the road, regardless of all that. I mean, let's say they even lose to Tennessee at home, 10-3. Do you really think they fire Day? I personally don't. Probably would have been on the hot seat at that point, but I don't think they fire him. And with every playoff win, his seat gets infinitely cooler with the performances they had, and the fact that you have wins distancing from the Michigan loss. Then you have Michigan in 23. Let's say they lose to Alabama in the Rose Bowl, 13-1. It's absolutely disappointing, but are you going to fire Harbaugh for winning the Big Ten and beating Ohio State 3 years in a row? No, of course not. So I think the only reason major changes are made with Penn State, the only way major changes are made with Penn State is, I believe, Franklin missing the playoffs. I think that's it. Or maybe they go 10-2 and lose in the first round. Maybe then you see major donor support for a coup, because this team should go better than 10-2 regular season. They go 10-2 in the regular season. The only reason the season isn't an absolute failure is if then they win 4 playoff games and go 14-2 and win it all. You followed it up, I see Justin Ziegler with another $2 super chat. What if Penn State loses the Big Ten and doesn't reach the semifinals? Well, then my answer would be you get rid of Franklin, because Penn State's proven, I think, NIL-wise, player retention-wise, booster-wise, that they can compete for natties and that they can recruit at a top 10 clip every year. If they lose in Indy and don't even reach the semis, and essentially what that means is you have a worse year than you did last year. You maybe I don't know, the field in the playoffs is better, so that home win is better than the SMU or Boise State win last year. But regardless, if the same record or a worse record than the prior year, it would be, that would be so gross. It'd be so gross. I don't even want to think about that. I don't. And I don't think that will happen either. If that scenario happened, though, again, losing the Big Ten and not reaching the semis, I think you'd see a coup. Wouldn't be likely, but you could see a coup where Franklin's out and they try and get someone else. Or they really step it up, like you said in your follow-up question, for they really step it up and invest more in the program. Really step it up. Okay, let's move on, though, and I want to get to some other things in the show. Again, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell so that you can get notified when we go live Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Do those things. We'll be live tomorrow as it is Wednesday. Probably won't be 6 p.m. Eastern Time because I'll be on the road then, but it will be earlier in the day. We'll be live. And watch out for other content that I upload on the week, whether it's a surprise live show like today. Don't usually schedule shows on Tuesday, but here I am. And we release content, whether it's clips of shows or maybe a breaking news event if I'm feeling it, or deep dives that are too long for our live shows. We release those on a daily basis, so it's useful to you to hit the notification bell. Also, be active in the live chat, or if you're watching this while you are no longer live or listening to it on Spotify, be active. Comment below, and I'll do my best to reply to you. And if you want to support the page, send a super chat. I'll get to it at the end of the show. And click the links in the description to check out the Patreon page, merchandise store, and join our free Discord server. But let's begin. So I want to talk about Big 12 win totals for 2025. The Big 12 is the conference of chaos. Some revere it as America's conference. It's a conference where no one is below 5.5 wins on their win total, and no one is above 8.5. So that's pretty crazy. It's pretty cool. Which teams will win more or less games than what Vegas sets? There are some surprises, and also Vegas, I think, showcases its intelligence in these win totals because there have been some adjustments made on the fly. For example, Jake Retzlaff is no longer with the BYU program due to allegations of misconduct, of assault. I don't know if YouTube would demonetize me if I stated the nature of said assault, but you can probably get the idea of what that is. I've got suspended for that. There's some more details about that I don't want to spend too much time on. The case was, well, some said it was dropped. I don't know if it actually was or wasn't, so I'm going to refrain from commenting about it. But the point being, BYU's win total, hint, hint, is 6.5 right now. And I'm pretty sure it was higher than that before the news dropped. So, I mean, Vegas is just, on the money, which is why they make money. And then I think these win totals overall are on the money, but also paint a picture that Vegas doesn't quite know what to do with many of these teams because there just is so much chaos. So let me pull these up for you and look at the Big 12 win totals here. Kansas State, 8.5 over-under wins. Same with Arizona State, same with Texas Tech. Those are your Tier 1 teams per Vegas. Kansas State, Arizona State, Texas Tech, over-under 8.5 wins. Baylor, Iowa State, Utah, and Kansas are all tied for 4th with 7.5 wins. BYU, Colorado, TCU, Cincinnati, they are tied at 8th for 6.5 wins. And then you have Houston, Oklahoma State, Arizona, UCF, and West Virginia. They are tied for 12th at 5.5 wins. So, my goodness. Honestly, actually, they are tied for, let me see, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. Yeah, tied for 12th. Don't know why I was tweaking out there with where the final few teams were tied in standings. Sometimes I overthink things. I don't think Vegas is overthinking these win totals, though, because to have a floor of 5.5 wins, the win totals you're giving out, obviously the worst possible record that teams will have is not 5-7 in the Big 12, but you're giving 5.5 wins as the lowest possible total, 8.5 is the highest possible. And Arizona State, for example, is juiced to the under. They're picking 8-4. I'm pretty sure that Kansas State is juiced to the under as well. And I think Texas Tech might be juiced to the over. A lot of that's talent. Obviously, talent you factor into power ratings, which Vegas already has up and running, their own private ones. You see the public ones that they definitely get input from, like from FPI, for example. Just looking at these is fascinating because of how close everything is. Again, the conference of chaos, and many take that statement, which is factual, to the subjective statement of it's America's conference. I'm going to watch the Big 12. Don't know how much I'll cover it, but I'm covering it in this segment, and I am going to watch it. It's going to be fascinating. Some easier picks. Previously in my win total segment, I've made easiest picks. There's no easy pick here. I think all of these are pretty accurate, and on some of them that I strongly disagree with in terms of I think Utah is going to win double-digit games. I think that Kansas State is probably going to win 9 or 10 games. I think that Arizona State, with all they bring back, there's a chance they'll win double-digit games again. Regardless of all of that, there's so much chaos in the conference, and the talent is so compressed and close together that I can easily see any of these win totals looking like absolute moronic projections at the end of the year. So some easier picks. I give you Utah at over 7.5 wins. Why would you say that, Sam? Well, Utah, they bring in Devin Dampier, who is a major upgrade over hobbled Cam Rising and younger brother of NFL bust Zach Wilson, Isaac Wilson. Younger brother of Zach Wilson, Isaac Wilson. Dampier with Beck as his offensive coordinator, Jason Beck. Going to be a huge upgrade for Utah. OC, QB combo continuity. Wayshawn Parker and Nakori Rogers are going to be an excellent running back duo. This offensive line, Jaron Crump, Tanoa Togai, Michael Mokofisi, Caleb Lomu, and Spencer Fano. That could be the best O-line in football. It does not reside in the SEC. The rest in peace Pac-12, now Pac-2, soon to be Pac-8 or Pac-10. I have no idea, or the SEC or the ACC. It could reside in the Big 12. You also have a defense with players like Logan Fano, Lance Holtzclaw, Dallas Vakalahi, Lander Barton comes back at linebacker. That's a stud. Teo Johnson's a stud at safety. Smith Snowden, Donovan Saunders, Elijah Davis, Rabbit Evans. That rounds up the secondary right there. And Kyle Whittingham is an excellent coach. Looks like he could be a movie star, also an excellent coach. And then you have the DC Morgan Scaley, who I really like. Just the staff, roster, talent combination, and the fact they're no longer developing their offense around Rising. They have a healthy QB in Dampier who can run around, take hits. I just love it. I love the situation, and I think a lot of people are underestimating Utah. Baylor, don't overthink it. 7.5 wins. The schedule is tough, but they have, I think, the second best quarterback in the Big 12 in Sawyer Robertson. He could be the best. I just think Sam Levitt's a little bit better. Bryson Washington, one of the better running backs in football. They also have a good O-line, highlighted by Colton Price and Omar Igbedian on the interior. You have good wide receivers like Ashton Hankins, Josh Cameron, and I like the addition of Kobe Prentice from Alabama. Defensively, they have some concerns, which is funny because Dave Aranda's a defensive guy, but they do have some players, some of whom they brought in from better schools in the SEC and Big Ten that were backups. I think they're going to win 8 games, and I can easily see them winning 9 or 10 or even more than that. So easy over, or easier over. Arizona's the easy under, and I genuinely mean that. I think Brent Brennan is a disaster there. I think that Jed Fish really built them up and left Brennan with some good pieces, took some good ones too, but left him with good pieces by Big 12 standards, and they almost considered firing him. So he doesn't have buy-in. They lost Dwayne Aquina to Texas, where Aquina was there prior, and they fired Dino Babers. So you don't have staff continuity. The quarterback in Noah Fifita was proven, as I thought entering 2024 and many others did, to be more of a product of Jed Fish than a product of himself. I just don't like it. I think they're going to go under 5.5, and I'm pretty confident in that. Kansas State, Arizona State and Texas Tech are schools that I think are at least going to win 9 games, maybe 10. Risky because they're already high at 8.5, but I think they're going to go 9-3 or better. I do not think any of them will reach the playoffs. Almost said all but one, but I don't think any of them will. ASU, it will be hard to replicate the success that they had. I feel like KSU is a good program, but I feel like they might have a certain ceiling to them, and I don't trust Texas Tech staff. But I trust aspects of their staff or roster. Roster for Texas Tech and less so Arizona State and Kansas State, but still to a certain degree, staff for ASU and KSU to win at least 9 games or more. Texas Tech, David Bailey and Romello Height at edge. Looking at my All-American team right there, that might be the best defensive end duo in the country. It is. I have it ranked as the best defensive end duo in the country. Yes, it's tied with Clemson. It's tied with Clemson. So yeah, insane talent resides in Lubbock, Texas Tech. Good article was written about Texas Tech by someone well respected in the sports world. I forget his name. His name escapes me, not super familiar with him, but I do follow him on X. Did a wonderful story there. Read bits and pieces of it. I know it resonated with Texas Tech fans, with Red Raiders. It'd be awesome, and I'm rooting for Texas Tech to have a huge year this year. I just don't quite trust the staff to make it a easier pick. ASU, I think Sam Leavitt's a top 10 quarterback. I'm not going to go much further than that, other than if they get their receiver back and they get him back healthy, his name being Jordan Tyson, I just think there's going to be a higher floor to them, especially with Kenny Dillingham being in year 3, getting staff continuity. I think they use the portal well. Kansas State, I just love their offensive line. I like their defense. I think Austin Romaine is the best linebacker in the Big 12. It's good that they bring him back. And I trust Chris Kleiman. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the Big 12. Could be the best in the Big 12, and I have him as a top 15, top 10 coach nationally. Stay away from Iowa State, Kansas, BYU, Colorado, TCU, Cincinnati, Houston, Oklahoma State, and West Virginia. And a confident under I have is UCF. I just don't like Alex Grinch being paired with Scott Frost. That is way too much brain rot for my comfort. I think Frost would do well at UCF, but I just don't get the DC hire whatsoever. If I'm wrong, it will be Arizona State under 8.5 wins. They're juiced to the under, and they won 4, 5, or 6 close games. So there's a chance that they're a top 15 power-rated team, and in the SEC or Big Ten, they'd also go 8-4, but they just find themselves in some close road games against some tougher opponents. They have an underrated schedule, actually, and they just go 8-4 and barely go under. And then for BYU, I love the program Satake has. I like their offensive line. Yes, they lost some guys to the portal, but they have a good kicker in Will Farron. I like Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly there at linebacker. Justin Kirkland joining Keanu Tenuvasa and John Tomopiu. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. That's a deep defensive tackle room. I like Chase Roberts at wide receiver and LJ Martin at running back. I think that due to the timing and the upside that Retzlaff showed, it's a loss, but he was also not one of the best quarterbacks or anywhere close in America. So if they have someone in there that is just competent or average or even below average, I think they can find an easy way over 6.5 wins, especially since their schedule's like easy in my mind, at least. So those are some areas where I could be wrong, for sure. Those are some areas where I could be wrong. So thank you for tuning into the Big 12 win totals. I think, again, Utah, Baylor, over, and the under being Arizona. Just don't overthink it. Don't do it. Do not overthink it. And thank you for watching my analysis. Really appreciate it. Let's move on now and talk about who is most likely to take a step back from the 2024 college football playoff participants. We'll be going in order from, in my mind, the most likely to take a step back to the least likely to take a step back, or even some teams who could take big steps forward from where they were last season. So let's get into it. The 2024 College Football Playoff was the first of its kind to feature 12 teams, and we ended up with the first two-loss national champion since 2007 LSU, the Ohio State Buckeyes. It was an amazing, historic run, and Ohio State, this is the beauty of the 12-team playoff, they went from being viewed as almost a failure and potentially Ryan Day's most disappointing team and potentially one of his worst power-rated teams to being viewed as his best in terms of achievement, winning it all. It doesn't get any better than that unless you win it all with a better record. And his second best power-rated team, only behind the 2019 Ohio State Buckeyes. So that's the beauty of the playoff, is there's a lot of teams who can get in, win it all. Not all the participants can win it all. We learned that last year. But there are more games, more rounds, and the Cinderella stories, Josh Pate said this, and he was accurate, was going to be a multiple-loss Georgia or Ohio State getting in and getting hot at the right time. Now, they won't be the only teams to win it all, and that's why we're doing this segment here, talking about who's most likely to take a step back. And the order of this, I'm going to tell you how it's going to go. We're going to spend about a minute, maybe a little more, on each team who participated in the 2024 playoffs. I'm going to go from who I think is the most likely to take a step back, either miss the playoffs or get worse, kind of an average of the two, and then go on to who I think is the average of most likely to improve or stay the same and most likely to make it. A little bit confusing, maybe, but I think it's a fun exercise to do. And when we'll start with the teams who are either losing a lot, typically, or they're playing at a lower level of football, and then finish with the teams that are returning a lot, combined with the fact that they're playing in one of the power conferences minus the Big 12, the Conference of Chaos. So sit back, relax, and let's kick this off with Boise State. I think they're the most likely to take a step back. They went 12-2, 8-0 in Mountain West Conference play. They were the Mountain West Conference champions. At the end of the day, they played Oregon very tightly, and they competed better with Penn State than I thought they would, especially after that first quarter where I thought Penn State may be trying to send a message and score 50 points, but then they got a little bit too cute. I won't go into any further detail. I mean, Penn State won by 17 points. They beat Boise to a pulp. My definition of that is you score double that which your opponent did, and Penn State did. So by my definition, they beat them to a pulp. But Boise had a successful season, led by Ashton Jeanty. They got a bye. No longer can unless somehow they are ranked in the top 4, which wouldn't happen. And losing Jeanty, who I think was the heart and soul of their team, is combined with the fact they play in the Mountain West. So if they just lose their conference championship game, they're not making it, most likely. That's the biggest reason why I think they are the most likely of all of these 2024 playoff participants to take a step back. Can Jeanty be adequately replaced, if at all, is their biggest question. Same with the ceiling of some players they bring back. I like Matt O'Madsen relative to the Mountain West, but Chenander, I think, could be a problem on defense with coaching, and they lost a ton at running back and D tackle. And it's not like they bring in this stellar recruiting class either. Maybe stellar by Mountain West standards, but stellar overall, no. They return 67% of their production, which is 13th, and in preseason S&P Plus, they're ranked inside the top 40. Looking at their schedule, they're given plus 190 odds to reach the playoffs, so they're the favorite by a long shot, along with I think maybe Tulane to be the G5 representative. At UCF week 1, hosting Eastern Washington week 2, they get a bye week 3, travel to Air Force week 4, host App State week 5, play at Notre Dame in week 6. Boise could win that game, but they could also lose to New Mexico in week 7 or UNLV week 8. They play at Nevada week 9, host Fresno State week 10, get a bye week 11. They finish off their final 3-game stretch at San Diego State, hosting Colorado State, and at Utah State. So it's interesting looking at Boise State and how much they bring back and the staff continuity, and I like Spencer Danielson, their head coach, but just, geez, it's going to be hard to repeat when you were really only afforded one loss, and then after that you have to win have to win your conference. And there are tougher leagues than the Mountain West. Moving on to Arizona State. They also bring back a lot. They do, and they went 11-3 last year, 7-2 in the Big 12. They won the Big 12, killed Iowa State. Should have lost to Texas because Texas kind of choked that, and they had a 99.9% chance to win it at one point. But after they blew that, Arizona State should have won. There were some calls that people were disputing, and Arizona State had all the momentum. Got Texas to a 4th and long, 4th and 13. But Texas won, and if Arizona State won that game, they certainly would have lost to Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. The reason I think Arizona State is going to take this step back, or that they will likely take the step back, look at their playoff odds, plus 470. Their Big 12 odds, they're not even this unanimous favorite, and their over-under win total is 8.5, juice to the under. Why is that? They won 5 close games, and they lost, I think all 3 of their losses were close losses, but the Texas loss should have been a blowout. Let's be fair there. And they played Texas State and Mississippi State close. As they figured it out throughout the year, they became a force. But Scadabo was the heart and soul of their team, much like J.T. to Boise. And defying the law of close games is hard, as Iowa showed last year. I like the team overall. I just question their ceiling a bit, but I do love their tackle group. Sam Leavitt, I think, is a top 10 QB nationally, could be top 5. And I like their wide receiver 1, Jordan Tyson. They did well in the portal. They brought back 79% of their production, which is second. And in preseason SP Plus, they're ranked 22nd, which is pretty damn good for how bad they were in 2023, just 2 years ago. Looking at their schedule, though, Northern Arizona is a cupcake in week 1, but at Mississippi State in week 2 could be a cupcake, could be a loss. Just straight up. Texas State in week 3, at Baylor in week 4 to open up. That's a tough opener. TCU in week 5. At home, they get a bye week 6, play at Utah week 7, that's tough. Host Texas Tech week 8, host Houston week 9, play at Iowa State week 10, have a bye week 11, play West Virginia week 12, play at Colorado week 13, and host Arizona week 14. All of these games on the schedule minus, I think, Northern Arizona, Texas State, and Arizona, 9 of the 12 games could be losses. They won't go 3-9. The staff and the roster are too good to lose that many games. But they can lose 4, they can lose 5, and if they just lose the Big 12 championship game, unless they go 12-0 and it's dominant, they're out of the 12-team field. So that's why I have them pegged here as the second most likely to take a step back and potentially miss. We then have SMU, 11-3 last year, first in the ACC, almost went 12-1 regular season and earned a bye in the playoffs. And SMU was one of those teams that was more G5 in terms of blue chip talent in the playoff field, but they could have actually done damage in the quarterfinals. Probably not beyond the semifinals, and they probably wouldn't have reached the title game. But, I mean, they almost beat Clemson, and their field and their schedule in the playoffs would have looked totally different had that happened. But not to get too hung up on that. SMU, plus 360 odds to reach the playoffs. SMU, I actually don't think will take this massive step back. They return 60% of their production, bring back Kevin Jennings. It's a question of whether he can take steps forward or whether SMU's talented enough to reload, but I like Jennings. They're 20th in preseason S&P+. I honestly, I really like their defense. I do. I mean, they have some killer safeties for SMU, but it's the ACC, it's not SEC or Big Ten, so if you go 10-2, you're not guaranteed to get in. And if you lose 3 games, unless you then do what Clemson did and you win the conference, you're probably out. East Texas A&M's their week 1 game. They play Baylor week 2, at Missouri State week 3, at TCU week 4, bye in week 5. Syracuse and Stanford is back-to-back home games weeks 6 and 7. Clemson and Wake Forest is back-to-back road games in weeks 8 and 9. Host Miami week 10, play at Boston College week 11. After their week 12 bye, they host Louisville and then travel to Cal to close out the regular season. I look at SMU over under 8.5 wins. I actually like the over, if I'm being honest. And with that non-conference schedule, if they go 10-2, they'd certainly be talked about in the playoff conversation. But it would depend on how they look in their games. And there's a big chance that SMU does take a step back because the ACC is much tougher than the American, which they were previously a part of, for sure. Okay, moving on, we got Tennessee. Man, oh man, I do not like Tennessee this year. I don't. And Pate Doesn't either. Pate probably knows more about the SEC than I do, because he's covered that league for several years. It's his focus, even though he's a college football show. There's something he doesn't like about Tennessee, and unlike Georgia, who has Kirby Smart, so I would say to Josh Pate, who doesn't like Georgia, hey, like get off the drugs. But Tennessee doesn't have Kirby Smart. they don't have that. They don't have Georgia's talent, and they're bringing in a G5 quarterback to try and save the season. I don't think Tennessee's going to have this losing record, but it's possible now with Nico gone. And although they lost on defense, I mean, think about it this way. Ohio State's offensive line was being viewed as this terrible unit entering the game against Tennessee, and it looked like that, and I get why people thought that. Tennessee's was clearly worse. I mean, the film and the stats would tell you that. Like the fact that Dylan Sampson had the season he did with that O-line was a miracle. And that's a shout out to Josh Heupel right there. Whether they can replace Sampson, Nico, have a new O-line, and replace James Pierce Jr., I mean, that'll answer the season right there. That could be the difference between going 10-2 versus going 5-7 or 6-6. I like their running back room. I love Kitzelman at tight end, but they only bring back 51% of their production. The only reason they're not lower than SMU, honestly, is the conference they play in. Tennessee at 10-2 is a lock for the playoffs. SMU is not. Arizona State and Boise State certainly not. Look at their schedule here. Week 1 got Syracuse. Week 2, East Tennessee State. Week 3, Georgia at home. Syracuse is a neutral field, by the way. Week 4 is UAB, Alabama, Birmingham. Mississippi State week 5 on the road, got a bye week 6. Week 7's Arkansas, week 8 at Alabama, 9 Kentucky at home, Oklahoma's at home week 10. That's a losable game with Nico out the window. Week 11 got a bye. Week 12 you got the cupcake against New Mexico State. Week 13 you travel to Florida. I don't think you're winning that game, but I also don't think you're beating Alabama on the road. Certainly not Georgia at home. Vanderbilt to close out the year at week 14. They went 10-3 last year, 6-2. They had a good year and a much better year than I thought they would under Josh Heupel. I think this year is a year to reload, a year to retool, a year to rebuild. By reload, I don't mean in the traditional way of, oh, we're going back. I mean reload as in make yourself a better program and raise your floor for the coming years. So what happened with Nico, although it likely won't happen again with some of these new things that are being implemented, just so that things don't blindside you in the future. Because to elite programs, they can get blindsided and they'll still take care of business. Speaking of which, that's Ohio State. You can blindside Ohio State. I know Knowles leaving did. So from Tennessee to Ohio State, we're really leveling up a tier. I would say even more so than going from the G5 in the Big 12 to SMU in Tennessee. We're really leveling up here to where Ohio State is this low because they were that good last year. So, of course, losing as much as they did off of 14-2 seasons, 7-2 in Big Ten, the national champions, and then you lose both your coordinators, you lose your quarterback, you lose a generational running back room, you lose all 4 of your starters on the D-line, and it sounded like they weren't deep. They weren't deep there in spring. And you return Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, but you lose a ton. I mean, only 48% of your production comes back. It's 92nd. Still first in preseason S&P Plus because Ryan Day runs an elite operation. The question for Ohio State is the O-line and D-line depth and the new coordinators. That determines everything. Maybe corner too, but I think quarterback and wide receiver right now for a lot of schools is at a low, with the exception of Ohio State and Clemson, honestly. And there are others. Alabama could pan out well. I know Auburn could pan out well. That really depends on quarterback. Their wide receiver rooms are loaded. But Ohio State's done a good job of sucking up wide receiver talent to a point where I don't think schools have the same access they did to wide receiver talent that Ohio State does. So it's really the trenches and the new coordinators. I like Ohio State. I think they're a really good team. Their playoff odds are minus 310 at some places, much higher than that. I look at what they lose and look at their schedule. It's easy on the surface, but week 1 they have to play Texas at home. Week 2 they got Grambling State. Week 3 Ohio. For whatever reason, Ohio's a night game and Texas is a noon game. It's stupid, but it is what it is. Off the week 4 bye at Washington, host Minnesota, then back-to-back road games at Illinois and at Wisconsin week 7 and 8. By week 9, Then week 10, they play Penn State at home, play Purdue on the road, UCLA and Rutgers back-to-back home games week 12 and 13, and the year playing against Michigan in week 14. What fascinates me about Ohio State is it's a schedule with some sneaky road games, and then you got 3 big games, 2 at home, 2 on the road, that based on how this team is built, Ohio State is probably going to lose one of those games, if not 2. And with how much they lose, and they will retool, I just can't put them ahead in this ranking of teams who will take a step back of many other teams who reached the playoff last year. Because a lot went right for Ohio State, even with the injuries, the way they were built, their coaching staff. They lose a lot of that. And this is a team that will not improve. Almost any other team we're going to talk about from here on out can improve compared to last year. Ohio State, I will publicly say on here, they will not improve. They cannot improve compared to last year as an overall team. Maybe there's a reality where at the end of the year they do, where they're better, but I highly doubt that. I mean, that was a legendary team last year. Not GOAT caliber, but legendary in the sense that they won it all. They had a historic run, and they were old, and they had old and veteran and elite coordinators and coaches, and they retain the assistants, but they lose a lot of those coaches. And anyway, don't need to spend too much time on that, but I think the point stands. Next up is Notre Dame. I'm not going to spend too much time on Notre Dame because they went 14-2, lost in the national championship game to Ohio State. But they're not a part of a conference, and that can play to their advantage. But I actually strangely think this year it could play to their disadvantage too. I mean, think about it this way. Miami's the opener in week 1, bye week 2, host A&M week 3, Boise State week 6, play at Arkansas week 5, host Purdue week 4, Texas A&M, we already went over that week 3, host USC week 8. I don't know why. I finished these graphics. This is an error on my part. I don't know why it shows Mississippi State and Florida where they were. I remember saving my edits for this, and it must be Photopea glitched out on me, but whatever. Bye week 9, at Boston College week 10, Navy week 11, at Pittsburgh week 12, Syracuse week 13, Stanford week 14. They are having a massive style change at quarterback, and Carr's coming off an injury, so he's unknown. I love Denbrock. I love the O-line. I do not love their D-line, nor do I like Chris Ash. And you return 56% of your production. I'm confident at some point in the future, because Freeman is just this young, and he's an icon, I think, of stability, and he's really improved every year at Notre Dame. He'll win it all at one point with Notre Dame. I'll come out and say that right now. This is not the year, though. And the only reason Notre Dame isn't behind Ohio State in this, because I am very confident Ohio State and Notre Dame, if they were to play again this coming year, Ohio State would once again dominate them, would once again beat them. But Ohio State was way better than Notre Dame. So Ohio State's up here, Notre Dame's right here last year. Notre Dame's going to drop, but Ohio State's going to drop at a bigger clip. So that's why Notre Dame's ranked ahead. But I like Marcus Freeman. I'm believing in them long term. I am selling on them a bit this year, though. I think they're a tad bit overvalued. We have Indiana up next. Now this may come across as insane because I'm saying Indiana has less of a likelihood to drop off than Notre Dame and Ohio State. But circle back to the point I made where, look, Ohio State was much better than Notre Dame, so I rank them behind Notre Dame because they're going to suffer a bigger drop-off despite still being better. It's the same thing here. Indiana, there's a very good chance they'll drop off. I'll come out and boldly say I actually think they're going to improve power ratings-wise. But they were much worse than Ohio State last year, and they were much worse than Notre Dame as well. It's a question of whether or not the players they bring back in Kamara, for example, and Pons, or the player they bring in Mendoza and Coogan at center from Notre Dame, how they gel, and whether or not that determines if Indiana can reload or whether they'll have to rebuild. I think they did well in the portal, and with plus 630 odds to reach the playoffs, I like them. Cupcake non-conference schedule again, week 1 against Old Dominion, week 2 Kennesaw State, week 3 Indiana State, week 4 Illinois to open up the conference play. They play at Iowa week 5. Off the bye in week 6, they travel to Oregon in week 7, host Michigan State and UCLA in weeks 8 and 9, play at Maryland and at Penn State weeks 10 and 11, host Wisconsin week 12, After their Week 13 bye, they travel to rival Purdue. At 8.5, I love, and I mean this too, love the over for Indiana. I'm a believer in Cignetti. I'm buying into him, his staff. I am putting them this low, though, because I have to factor in averages. I'm high in Indiana. I'm essentially picking Indiana to play as close to their ceiling as I reasonably can from preseason standpoint. I'm picking them to go back to the playoffs and win a playoff game. So at least get to the quarterfinals. Sneak peek. But there is a world where they go 7-5 or 8-4. In a way that Ohio State just won't. Or Notre Dame even just won't. So I have to factor those things in with my prediction of Indiana. Up next, we have Oregon. So Oregon is a curious case because I think Lanning massively punched above their weight class. I mean, they went 13-1 last year and 9-0, but I said all season long, that the 23 Ducks would beat the 24 Ducks by probably, a touchdown or more than that, even. I said that all season long, and I stand by that today. I truly think the 23 Ducks were way better than the 24 Ducks. It's just 24 was more of a down year, and I think Lanning had his best coaching job of his career. And then when they ran into Ohio State, you saw, oh, yeah, this team was definitely punching above its weight class. I mean, they were closer in terms of using an analogy for the 2022 season. They were closer to TCU, who wasn't even power rated top 10 at the end of the year, than they were to Georgia, who was power rated 1. The fact they beat Ohio State, I think, was pretty impressive. The question is, can they reload? I kind of think they will to a certain degree, but also they need players to break out because of how much they lose and the fact that they don't quite have the roster talent yet that Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, or maybe even Clemson do. I mean, they could be close to Clemson, but they do not have Clemson's seniority, which can compensate for some talent issues. I like Oregon kind of everywhere. I mean, they returned Betcher, Uiagalelei. I like the additions of Theron Johnson, Dylan Thieneman on defense, but I think that Lupoy is a question. They're outside the top 100 in returning production, and S&P Plus is a little bit shaky on them, ranking them 7th preseason. And this schedule, I get they have Montana State week 1, Oklahoma State week 2, Northwestern week 3. It's a road game, yes, long distance travel, but Oregon should win. Oregon State week 4. Penn State week 5 is a game where I would favor Penn State by double digits right now, just being honest. Week 6, they get a bye. Indiana at home week 7. That's not a gimme. Rutgers on the road after Penn State, then Indiana, also factoring in travel to Northwestern, and then you play at Rutgers in what could be a Friday night. That is a sleep fest. That's not a guaranteed win. Wisconsin at home week 9 probably is because Wisconsin has to travel out there, and it's at the end of their tough schedule. They get a bye week 10, at Iowa week 11, not guaranteed. Minnesota at home week 12, USC at home week 13, Washington on the road week 14. There are several spots for Oregon to slip up, so that's why I don't have them higher here, and I don't think this is a team that has the quality to be the number 1 team in America, though they could be. I'm just not ranking them lower because I don't think they were elite last year. I don't think they were as good as their final ranking or record would tell you. I don't. So therefore, they can improve. There's a world, and it may even be likely, where Oregon gets better in power ratings, but record-wise they have a loss or even 2 more losses in the L column at the end of the year. Texas, we got the Longhorns. Won 13 games, lost 2 more than Oregon, though, 13-3, 7-1. First in the SEC, we're the best team in power ratings by FPI, not by S&P Plus, though. This is one of my favorite teams this year. I think Texas is talented enough to reload and prove. It's a question, but I think they're there. And can the special teams unit take a leap? Because last year Auburn was bad at the end of the year. They bring in Jack Bomeister from Utah, and then I like the kicker they got from Texas State and Mason Shipley. And then combine that with, Arch Manning, the fact that I think their O-line, while inexperienced, is a bunch of talent. Their defense, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill Jr., Michael Taft. My biggest question for them, Steve Sarkisian in big games. And big games where he doesn't have an experienced talent or matchup edge. Like when he has to play someone who's as dialed in as his team is, like Ohio State last year in the Cotton Bowl, Georgia both times against Kirby Smart, or the year before against Oklahoma and Washington, what can he do? Will he win those games? It's a similar question to Penn State with James Franklin. They only bring back 51% of their production, but I love them regardless. Week 1 against Ohio State loses more, and they don't have the same balanced roster. On the surface, they have the same amount of 5 stars and 4 stars, but Ohio State's way more focused at wide receiver, disproportionately compared to every other position, and their most talented players are younger. Texas has some talented players that are younger, but also some that are older, and they're more balanced. The only reason I don't love Texas in that game is it's on the road in the shoe, and I think Day's a better coach than Sark. But that could be a win. San Jose State week 2. I think the wrong team's favored, by the way, in Ohio State, Texas. Texas should be favored. Short line, but they should be favored. Week 3, host UTEP. Week 4, they get a bye. Week 5, Sam Houston. Week 6, they travel to Florida. Week 7, they play Oklahoma, Red River Shootout, at Kentucky and at Mississippi State weeks 8 and 9. Week 10, they play Vandy. Off their bye in week 11, they got to play Georgia on the road, host Arkansas week 13, and then host Texas A&M. It is a bad home schedule. And the sneaky thing about Texas is from week 6 to week 9, so from October 4th to 25th, you can extend that really from the 28th of September to the 1st of November. They don't play a home game. So keep in mind there, because that can sometimes psychologically affect a team. I don't quite think that would dampen Texas. It's overall a schedule where outside of Florida, Georgia, and Ohio State, maybe Oklahoma, but I don't think Oklahoma matches up with them well. It's a pretty doable schedule. I mean, I'm pretty confident they'll go over their 9.5 preseason win total, and this team can improve with what they have at quarterback and what they have coming back on defense. Up next, we got Georgia. Georgia, why not? Why not Georgia? Why not Georgia? Won the SEC last year with everything going wrong for him. Pardon me there. Almost clicked on the wrong transition, but we saved ourselves. Everything almost went wrong. Everything that I think could have gone wrong did. And yet they have minus 265 odds to go to the playoffs. And I think with how much went wrong for them, how bad the rushing offense was, how inconsistent Beck was, I think this team is at least going to stay the same in terms of quality and could improve there. Week 1, they play Marshall. Week 2, they get Austin Peay. 3, they travel to Tennessee. Week 4, they get a bye. They host Alabama week 5. Should be Smart's first win against Alabama since 2021. Get Kentucky at home. Auburn on the road week 7. Ole Miss at home week 8. They get a bye week 9. Play Florida neutral field in week 10. Play at Mississippi State week 11. Host Texas week 12. Charlotte week 13. Georgia Tech week 14. And I think that with the caliber of Coach Kirby Smart is, and with the way Georgia recruits and develops, I think they're going to stay the same or take steps forward. We now have Penn State. This is the team I'm actually picking to win it all this year, believe it or not. The only reason I don't have them ahead of Clemson is Clemson returns so much more than they do. And Penn State was way better than Clemson last year. If Penn State and Clemson played neutral field at the end of last year, Penn State probably wins by double digits. They probably win by anywhere from 10 to 17 points. So they're going to get closer in terms of the gap between the two teams in 2024, but I do think Penn State will be better. Minus 235 odds to go to the playoffs, plus 260 to win the Big Ten, only behind Ohio State. Over-under win total of 10.5, and they return 65% of their production and are third in preseason S&P Plus despite their talent deficit compared to teams that are usually top 5, and their recent history of teams not being able to win the big games. But that's the only question for Penn State. I think everywhere else, their staff, their strength and conditioning, the trenches, even the outside with the upgrades they made at receiver. I love Penn State this year. And their schedule, week 1 against Nevada, week 2 FIU, week 3 Villanova, get a bye in week 4 from 5 to 8 weeks. They play Oregon at home, UCLA on the road, Northwestern at home, Iowa on the road. They get a bye in week 9 before traveling to Ohio State week 10, hosting Indiana week 11, playing at Michigan State week 12, Nebraska week 13 at home. They end the year off at Rutgers for week 14. Not the easiest schedule in the world by any means, but I think if Penn State plays their cards right, it's essentially a 2-game schedule, which is nice. Oregon at home, which I'd favor Penn State right now, as I said earlier, by double digits, and then Ohio State on the road. And I think Penn State's a better quality team than Ohio State, even if they're playing in Columbus. And then, last but not least, we got the Clemson Tigers. I don't know what to think about Clemson. I know that they're going to be a top 6 team in my mind. Absolute worst, I think top 10, which is still better than last year. But will they win it all? And is Dabo Swinney still the same coach that he was 7 years ago? Or not? Or maybe it's not that. Maybe the 2010 staff was just that good, and it's very hard, if not impossible, to replicate, combined with the scouting success they had at QB and the recruiting success there too. It's interesting looking at Clemson. I mean, they're number 1 in returning production. 80% of their 2024 stats are coming back. That's 2023, 2022 COVID year level stuff. And a lot of these guys aren't COVID players. 8th in S&P Plus preseason, minus 142 to reach the playoffs. They're the favorite to win the ACC. Their over-under win total of 9.5, I think, is too low. I mean, the absolute worst case scenario I can see for Clemson is 9-3 again, but I don't think that's even a realistic floor. That's just factoring in or projecting injuries and the team busting, which is unlikely. The realistic floor is 10-2, which I think the only other team in America that can say that's Penn State. And I think Penn State's absolute floor, even with things going wrong, is probably 10-2. You look at Clemson, if the rushing offense and defense can go to a top 10 level, which is absolutely possible, then this team should win it all. And I think they should be expected to win it all. However, I look at their schedule, week 1 against LSU, and then at the end of the year, week 14 at South Carolina. They do play 2 schools from the SEC, and there is a chance that they could lose both of those games. And then you get Troy week 2, Georgia Tech on the road week 3, Syracuse at home week 4, off the week 5 bye at North Carolina, at Boston College. Then in week 8 you host SMU, and week 9 you get a bye, Duke week 10, Florida State week 11, Louisville on the road week 12, Furman week 13, South Carolina week 14, again on the road. I look at Clemson and I think that this team should win it all, but whether it's the schedule being tough enough to wear them down, like whether it's South Carolina or LSU and they give them a loss and they have to play an extra game in the playoffs, or whether it's the fact that maybe the schedule's easy enough to not adequately prepare them, or you look at the staff and some of the recent issues Dabo Swinney has had, they can win it all. I just don't know if I'd pick them right now. And I think they're by a mile the most likely to take a step forward, least likely to take a step back. So it's just interesting when looking at Clemson and all they bring back. I really love the Tigers. This is a team that I'm going to have to think about because I imagine I had them top 5 in my preseason top 25. I imagine they're going to be ranked even higher than top 5 in the next go around. Okie dokie. So let's see what else I have planned. Gosh, I really want to get to the team previews, but that segment went longer than I expected. Like that segment, if I'm being honest, I think went 15 minutes longer than I wanted it to. So I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can do that. Darn. I really don't know if I can do that. Chris Lane, though, thank you for the $2 super chat. I really appreciate it. Happy Tuesday, Sam, people. I hope all is well. Well, thank you very much. I hope that all is well with you, too. Really do. Okay. This was a good show. Only 2 topics, sure. And, yeah, I said I was going to do more in the title. I actually feel really good right now. However, I have a commitment that I have at 9 and show one on a little bit longer, which is perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly fine. So I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that commitment. And at the end of the day, well, it was a good show. Thank you guys for coming on. And we will be live tomorrow. And we won't just be answering your questions. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going over these predictions too. So it'll probably be a much longer show. I would say it'll be a longer show for sure. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm actually going to edit all of this right now. Just so that way, people don't think I'm covering or previewing when I'm not. I'll see you guys very soon. And yeah, thank you again. Be on tomorrow at be on tomorrow, not at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Be looking out for me. I'd even say at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It could be later than that, but that's the earliest I'll go. So see you guys. Thank you